So welcome to this week's webinar. My name is Rose and I'm joined by Tammy as always. And this week we are going to be talking about one of our online teaching tip series webinars, which is engaging warm-up activities. Now, this is a very small part of a lesson, but it is such an important part, and it kind of sets the tone of the lesson and gets our students involved right from the start. So today we will be taking a look at what are warm-up activities, the purpose of a warm-up activity, why do lesson warm-ups matter, and they do matter. They play a huge role even though they only take up a couple of minutes of our lesson. The criteria for an engaging warm-up activity. Engaging warm-up activities to include in your lessons. So we'll give you some examples of activities you can use for younger students as well as older students, because they are very different. And we need to remember that age does play a role in the type of activity we use for our students. Then, of course, key tips to remember. And lastly, we have our Q&A as always. So firstly, we're going to start off with this quote, and it says, "You cannot make people learn. You can only provide the right conditions for learning to happen." And this is exactly what we will be talking about today. We want to provide that perfect condition for our student to be able to learn and be at ease while learning. And this is what a warm-up activity should be doing for our students. So next, we would love to hear from you. So please share your ideas. What are warm-up activities? So if you would like to contribute, please just leave a comment down below in the comment section, or you can let us know through the chat function in the webinar room. So we would love to hear what you have to say.
So I know for me personally, a warm-up activity needs to be just that, to literally warm up your students. So to engage with them, to relax them, to help them feel welcome into the classroom, be it online or in a real life classroom, and beginning to form that relationship with them right from the get-go, and to engage them with that lesson, whatever you'll be teaching from them. And we've also had somebody comment that warm-up activities are anything that gets your students talking and engages them at the beginning of any lesson, which is, I would completely agree with that.
Definitely, that's exactly what they are. So right from the start of the lesson, we want our students to be engaged and excited for the lesson. We want them to participate as well as feel comfortable right from the start. And this is exactly what a warm-up activity should be doing for our students.
And someone else has also said that it's important to get them used to talking English a bit before doing activities, which again is a really good point. It presents as real life scenarios. So you're not just teaching English as just an academia, but actually you're learning it and teaching it for a purpose.
Definitely. So those are all great ideas. Thank you so much. So next, I will hand over to Tammy.
So we've just had a little brief discussion about what warm-up activities are. So let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail. So what? Let's have a look. So warm-ups are any activities that are completed at the beginning of a class to prepare students for learning. It's a bit like if you went to a gym class. For example, if you went to a spinning class, I did this morning, the first few minutes are spent warming you up, getting your heart pumping, getting you going. And it's the same in an academic way for our students. We want to get them going straight away, but we can do it gently. It hasn't got to be all a massive load of information. We can warm them up slowly. Warm-up activities help students shift their frame of mind onto the subject they're about to learn. For many people, when they're teaching online, the students have just come, they may have just come home from school, they may have come home from an extracurricular activity, or they may have been busy watching a film or doing a hobby. So when we begin to teach them, whether that's online or physical, maybe they come from another class, then we need to help them shift whatever they're thinking about before our lesson straight onto the topic that we'll be covering in our lessons. And the third point is that warm-up activities are done in the first 5 minutes of class, and they are done to encourage and promote interest in the lesson topic to follow. When I was working in schools, a very common way that teachers would do this, as we'll look at more ideas later, they would have a warm-up activity written on the board. And very often you wouldn't have to say anything to the students because they knew that's what they had to do. They'd come in, sit down and get on with their warm-up activity straight away. So immediately they're interested and they're hopefully engaged.
Definitely. So now we would take a look at what is the purpose of warm-up activities and why do we need to use them in our lessons. So firstly, it helps get students in a learning frame of mind. Now, this is what Tammy's already mentioned, but we just want them to be ready for, the next 30 minutes or the next hour, depending on how long your lesson is with your students. So it just kind of gets them in that study mind, in that learning mind, they're open to what you are saying and they are aware of what the topic is. So next, it's to encourage participation. So when we are engaging our students right from the start of the lesson, it's easy to have that participation throughout the lesson. If they are having fun right from the start, they're going to want to participate for the next 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, depending. It helps to inspire students to think about the new topic. So they might not have ever heard of, what they would be doing in the lesson. And it's just a great way to kind of get them to be aware of, what we will be covering in the next couple of minutes. So it's great to get them thinking about the topic and maybe sharing their own ideas with you. Next is the purpose is it considers a previously learned topic in a new way. So this is great because sometimes your students had a lesson a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So it's great to just recap on what was learned because majority of lessons, follow on from each other. So it's a great way to kind of just refresh their memories of what they had learned, in their last lesson and get them using that vocabulary again, just to jog their memory. And then lastly, it promotes a fun and motivating learning environment. So that's what I said. It can be a warm-up activity, can be anything as long as it's appropriate and, it makes sense in the situation. It can be anything. It can be a game. It can be a conversation. It can be a song, whatever you feel your student would enjoy most. So it needs to be fun and motivating and encourage our students to participate right from the very start. So now we would do a poll, and this poll is all about why do you think warm-ups are useful? So there we go. We will release the poll. So why do you think warm-ups are useful? And remember, you can choose as many as you feel you would like to choose. So firstly, they spark conversation and discussion. It helps ease student anxiety. It helps create a connection between previous lessons, and it is there to reinforce important concepts. So I can see most people are choosing all of them, which is great. Great. So I think that's yeah. So there we go. So majority of the people have chosen all the choices, and that's great because that is exactly what a warm-up activity is and why it's useful. So we will continue on with this. over to you, Tammy.
Okay, so why do lesson warm-ups matter? So maybe before we move on, maybe we could ask the people who are with us in the webinar, what do you think? Why are they so important? Why can we not just come into a lesson and just get on straight away with teaching the main part, then the activity, and then set homework and go? Why do we need to do this at the beginning of a lesson?
I think it's really important because our students are coming from maybe an extremely busy day, or they've just been doing homework. You know, it just sets that tone of, this is what we're going to do in the lesson. You know, do you want to share your ideas? It makes them feel like they are participating. And it just sets that, you know, comfortable tone around the lesson. Maybe the student is feeling very anxious. They have a lot of things to do after this, and it just kind of takes their mind off what's going on around them, and they are able to focus better.
I also think it's a really good way in which to encourage your students to come, because imagine if your student isn't really keen, they've had a full day at school. If you're doing this online, they may have lots of different hobbies and activities. In some cultures it's quite normal. If you ask a student about their day, they've done several different things in a day that maybe we would never do, so they may be reluctant to come to the lesson. But if they know that when they come to your lesson, it's fun, it's engaging, they get to participate, they get to play a game, or they get to tell you about their day, then they will want to come back. And we always want to be able to encourage them to do that.
Definitely. We had a great comment here, and it says, I think it's very important, especially in ESL, to give our students more exposure to language. They often do not get enough in their natural setting in different countries, for example. Warm-ups help to relax them and make them feel comfortable. Yes, and I agree with that. I've experienced that where my students been all over the place, and as soon as I kind of, you know, just start the warm-up and it's about a topic they are really interested in, it just kind of zens them, it calms them down, and they get excited to, you know, participate.
It does. It gives them a reason, particularly for ESL, there's a reason why they're learning this. Definitely. Okay, so let's move forward.
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at some reasons why. So they spark conversation and discussion. So I had a student who I've had for about 2.5 years now, no, just over 2 years. And when I first met him, he was very shy. In his notes, it said that he was quite reluctant to become involved because he was so shy. But by introducing conversation icebreakers, now when I see him, he cannot wait to tell me about his day. He's often uploaded pictures about his day. He's uploaded videos, and it gives him the chance to use that English in a real life setting. So we're using that fully immersive method right from the get-go. And it's a great way to get to know your students as well. It helps to reiterate previous lessons, as we've said, and to reinforce important concepts. So you can use icebreakers as almost like a little bit of revision to test your students' ability, because if they haven't got a new concept, a new skill, then you may have to adapt the lesson you're going to teach. If they're really struggling with it, you may have to think, oh, we need to go back first and go over this. So it's a good way to do that, as well as reinforcing their learning. It helps to ease student anxiety. Again, if they know they're going to come into a lesson where it's going to be relaxed, fun. It doesn't have to be all singing and dancing. It can be something quite calm. You can adapt it according to your students' needs and interests, but it reduces that anxiety. They'll want to come to your lessons. It helps make problems less abstract so that important concepts are more approachable. And the last point is that it makes students comfortable and confident about asking questions and speaking. It would be awful if we were the kind of teacher who never gave our students the opportunity. But those teachers, there aren't very many of them. So it's really important we have that responsibility to create that environment where our students are comfortable to say, I'm not sure, I'll ask a question, because I could do that at the beginning of the lesson and the teacher didn't mind. So it's all about engaging with our students and really helping them to enjoy it from the minute they enter your classroom.
So just a reminder about our amazing TEFL course. It is still on sale and you can find it on iqtefl.com. It is a great course and fully accredited by Accreditat, and it is made by teachers for teachers. And if you prefer to study on or go through the course on a tablet, you can do so. On your phone, you can do so. It's compatible over all devices. So please head over to iqtefl.com if you are interested. And then, of course, our CPD courses are available now, so you can sign up for them. This is also on the iqtefl.com website. These are also still on sale. I am personally doing the psychology of individual learners, and it's amazing. So please head over if you are interested in signing up for one of these courses. And then, of course, to view more of our weekly webinars, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and then head over to all our other social media platforms. We are sharing content daily, and they are so helpful for online teachers, teachers in a physical classroom, teachers or students studying to be teachers. So please head over to all those platforms if you are interested in any of this. So next we have another question. What do you think are some key components to an engaging warm-up before a lesson? So we want to just hear from you what you think some important characteristics are of an engaging warm-up activity before a lesson. So please share your ideas.
So whilst people are doing that, I personally think one of the most important things, which I know we're going to look at, but it needs to be relevant. It needs to link in with the topic. If you Google icebreakers, warm-ups, there's a huge variety that you could use, but you need to use the ones that are relevant and have a purpose. Think, okay, why am I using this warm-up? It's never should just be to fill time. It should be to link it to either a previous topic or the topic that we're going to be covering in that lesson.
Definitely. I agree with that. I think that it does need to be relevant to the lesson and to what you are going to be covering in the lesson. There may be times where you would have to adapt this. I've had to do this where my student just was not interested, you know, they just did not want to like participate in anything. So I had to kind of adapt and change that. And in those circumstances, it's completely okay as long as you are getting that student involved.
Definitely.
But for the most part, it should be relevant to what you're going to teach. So we had someone that said some vocabulary elements such as those in the topic of the current lesson or previous lesson, which is great. I think that's so important.
Definitely.
And she continues to say, I also always include something they are interested in or ask them one or two questions about things I know about my students. So for example, my one student plays the double bass. And she practices a lot. So I always ask her, how is practice? So that's great. I think it's so important because that will get your students involved and participating and answering because they are interested in what you've just asked them.
That's great.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so let's have a look at criteria for an engaging warm-up for your lesson. So we've said about why it's important. So let's have a look at what a warm-up activity should be. So they should be engaging. There's no point setting up a warm-up activity that you know your student will really hate or they'll be bored. For it may work really well with another student because they may like things to be a bit more serious. I have a few students like that. They don't like playing games. They're young, but they don't like it. They prefer a more serious one. So for them, that would be engaging. But for maybe other students of mine, they want a game. They want something they can be engaged. So adapt that according to your students. They should be promoting problem-solving skills. So using your concepts that you've taught in previous lessons, or concepts that you're going to be introducing in a new lesson, and linking them to problem solving skills with learning English, applying grammar, for example, applying new vocabulary and so forth. Our third point, it should be encouraging participation. So we really want to try and encourage a student-led approach where possible. If it's always the teacher talking, then the students are involved less and less. It needs to really be the other way around. Age appropriate. It wouldn't be a great idea to use maybe, which we'll look at in a minute, maybe puppets with an adult learner or a teenage learner. They probably would be very quickly disengaged. So when you are thinking about your warm-up activity and you're preparing it, really think, is this appropriate for the age of my student? And the next point, they should be fun, okay? So even if your student, as I said before, likes a bit more serious, you can still add a fun element to it. They, as we said before, they need to be relevant. There has to be a purpose. It needs to link in with that lesson or the previous lesson. And the final point is that it is facilitating previously learnt knowledge. So as we all know, learning is like building blocks. So warm-ups can be almost like a cement. They can cement one activity from the previous lesson with the topic or activity that we're going to be focusing on that lesson, and we can use them to keep building up that wall of learning.
So now we will be moving on to taking a look at some engaging warm-up activities for young learners. So these are going to be vastly different to those we would use for older students. So let's have a look at the first one. So the first would be puppet conversations. Now, this is a great activity for a young student because it gets them talking, getting them to use the language. Maybe they learned some new words in the previous lesson. You can incorporate those. It's such a fun activity to start your lesson with. So let's take a look at why. Puppets create a warm and relaxing environment, especially for our younger students. They might feel very anxious because it's daunting, you know, it's a language that they might not be hearing in their home country. And we, or most lessons are fully immersive in English. And this can be stressful for young students. So it creates that relaxing environment. It's fun. They want to participate. They might show you their own puppets. It's just great to get them involved. They are great for encouraging listening and speaking skills. So you might be asking them questions and then, you know, they would answer your question. So it's a fun way to do that without it being stressful, or, you know, they feel scared they might make a mistake. So it's just, it creates that really fun environment. Puppets encourage young learners to participate and focus. I've had a student that loves stuffed animals, and she's all over the place normally, which is totally fine because I don't mind it. But as soon as I bring out my stuffed animals, she is so focused. She just wants to participate and, you know, listen to what I'm saying or the puppet saying. So it's just great for kind of just calming them down as well. And then lastly, they are very effective in encouraging the use of new vocabulary, as well as practicing learned vocabulary. So this is what I've just mentioned. Maybe they learned some new words in the last lesson and they get a chance to use them, or you could introduce the vocabulary you will be learning about in that lesson. So it's just a great opportunity to practice that.
I've also found that they can be good if you have a student who's a bit upset, because if you have young students, that can happen. For some reason, I've been with a student before, they've been fighting, they bang their finger on something and they start to cry because they're only little. Or I've had students come, I had this happen last week, a student that she didn't want to come to lesson, I'd never seen her before. And all I do is I got my puppets out, and within 2 or 3 minutes, in both those occasions, they were engaged, they've forgotten why they were crying, and they were enjoying the lesson. So they hold a really good purpose for that too, I find.
Definitely.
So let's look at point 2, activity 2, sorry, describe the picture. So literally, as you can see, you can have a picture, maybe one that you have preloaded or that is within the materials in the classroom, or maybe even one that you've drawn, or even one that you maybe have encouraged your student to draw. So let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. Why would we use this as an activity for an icebreaker or warm-up? Well, it's a great way to test previously learnt knowledge. So, for example, maybe in your previous lesson, you taught family nouns. So you could then upload a picture, or you could draw one, depending what you've got. And you could test them to say, what's this person's name? Can they remember that's mom, dad, brother, sister, everything like that? So it's testing that knowledge and whether they've learned it. It encourages speaking skills at the start of the lesson. Most young learners love to talk about pictures. That's why we use them so much, and it doesn't overwhelm them. They've got a nice picture. They can just pick up bits that they want to talk about. Our third reason, it allows students to share their opinions and thoughts. So, for instance, you could show them the picture of the family and they've learnt those family nouns. Great. Now, can you use that to ask them about their family? How many brothers do you have? What does your dad look like? Anything like that. And they can give their thoughts. And again, it can encourage problem solving and creative thinking skills. So using pictures are a really good way to engage your students right from the beginning, encouraging that conversation and helping them to apply all of that previously learned knowledge. I love using pictures as icebreakers.
Yeah. So next is, I think it's a pretty common icebreaker or warm-up activity, and that is songs and actions. And I use this quite often with my younger students. It's also a great activity to use maybe halfway through the lesson. I know this is not an icebreaker, but I find it really refocuses them and kind of gives them a break, in between what you're learning. But as a start, as a warm-up activity, it's great for encouraging physical participation right from the start. So they are fully engaged, they're doing the actions, they're listening, they're singing along. It's just a great activity to start off with. It is a stress-free and enjoyable activity. I think I've had one student that told me, oh no, put it off, he doesn't like it. But that's fine, you will come across those students and you're just going to have to adapt and wing it, like we mentioned in a couple of webinars ago. So it's just, for majority of our younger students, it's just a great fun start to the lesson and gets them excited to learn.
They love it.
And then, yeah, they do. And then it can be useful in teaching new vocabulary. So depending on the song, it might have the words or the letter sounds or whatever you are teaching in the actual song and gets them chanting along, which is great. That's exactly what you want. And then lastly, it helps to increase memory and facilitate previously learned knowledge and concepts. So this song or the actions could be about the previous lesson. You're just kind of revising before you start learning something new. So it's just a great activity to include for younger students.
So let's have a look at engaging warm-up activities for older learners. So these need to be very different because otherwise they would not be age appropriate. So let's have a look at this. So the first one, word associations with themes. We'll move to the next slide so we can explain really why we do it and then what that actually is. So why? It helps to promote problem solving skills, which we'll look at in a minute when we look at how we play this game. The second point, it encourages creative thinking, which particularly for our old learners is really good. We want to engage both sides of the brain. And by engaging your creative, we know that's very effective when you're learning a foreign language. The third reason is it requires the student to participate. So they don't really have a choice. They need to be involved in this, which is good because actually I've come across some older learners who, particularly teenagers, who can be a bit reluctant because they're teenagers. it's a lesson, then maybe they don't want to be there. Maybe they feel a bit embarrassed. I know as a teenager I used to get embarrassed about everything. So this is nice because it gives them the opportunity to participate, but in a nice, no pressure kind of way. The fourth reason, again, like all our warm-up activities, it will facilitate learnt and new vocabulary. And the final one, it's fun and challenging. So what is it? What does this mean? Well, what you have to do is that you give each group a theme, and you can even do this as a one-to-one. So a group or what your one-to-one student, a theme such as food or animals. And then what you have to do is you take it in turns in saying one word that associates with this theme. So let's look at the example. If we had the theme food, you could start off as a teacher and you can say pizza, and then you ask your students to think of another food word, and you keep it going as long as possible. I've used this in very frequently in real life classroom settings with teenagers. They really like it. They like the challenge because initially you can probably think of quite a few words, but when you're learning a new language, those words can run out quite quickly. So engage that creative. It's a nice challenge, and it's a bit of fun. There's no pressure. It's just a bit of fun. So, and it's a really effective way.
Yeah, I think this is a great activity, and especially if you're using the topic you're covering in the lesson, it's just a great way to kind of get them thinking along those lines. And
definitely,
I think all students like to have a bit of fun with their learning, so that as well is a bonus.
Yes.
So next we will take a look at the activity called quick questions. So why would we use this? It's a great opportunity to introduce the lesson material. So you would be asking some questions about, what you're about to teach your student and what they are going to be learning. It promotes speaking skills, and this is what we want from our older students as well as our younger students, but more so from our older students because they have been exposed to the language for longer. So it'd be great to just get them to use those speaking skills. And then it promotes interest in the lesson content. It facilitates learned and new vocabulary. And then lastly, it encourages students to engage in conversation. So how would we play quick questions? Well, you just write a list of 2 to 3 questions on the board which introduce the theme of your lesson. So if you're teaching online, you would just be using your virtual whiteboard, or you could have a real life whiteboard. It depends on what you prefer. And then, for example, if you're going to talk about books, you could write, what is your favorite book? What was the last book you read? And what kind of book do you prefer? And then then you would encourage students to expand on their answers. So it's just a couple of fast questions to get them talking about the topic, kind of get them interested in what they are going to learn. And it encourages them to use their speaking skills and practice their sentence construction. So it's great.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for anyone to share their ideas. You can do that now in the chat, or you can leave your comments below. I know that we have had some people sharing ideas. One of them, somebody who shared with us that with my younger students, I love playing guess the picture. So it's a bit like we were doing before, but this is a bit different. So it always brings a smile to their faces, especially because my drawings are not so great. Me too. I always warn my students, I cannot draw, yeah. But it doesn't matter. I love playing that game. So for example, if I've taught fruit, or I know I'm going to be teaching fruit, or we're revising it, very often I will say, I'm going to draw a picture. Can you guess the fruit? Things like that. I know when I have a new student, I always ask them 3 or 4 questions to get to know them. So what's your favorite color, your favorite animal, your favorite food, and your favorite toy, depending on what they can understand. You can use props, TPR, all sorts of things to do that. And they really like it because they can show you their toys. Or if they're older students, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite book? What's your favorite singer? They like that you're taking an interest in them. But we have lots of different ideas as well. That we could share many, but we don't have the time to. So please leave your comments. Okay, so let's have a look at some key tips to remember when we are doing our warm-ups. So remember, always consider the age of your students. As we said before, it needs to be age appropriate. Make sure it's relevant. Don't just do a warm-up because it's a filler for time. It has to have a purpose. Try to make it as fun and enjoyable as possible. And our fourth point, try to encourage and incorporate knowledge already learned. And something I want to just slip in here is, if it's not working, change it. So I had a warm-up activity that I tried to use with one of my students the other day, and they just didn't understand. It was very simple, but they didn't understand it. So we just left it and moved on to something else. Don't be afraid to say, because I thought they could, I thought that their vocabulary was good enough, and I was wrong. That's fine, that's what happens. So don't be afraid to adapt, to say this isn't working, we'll try something else. Maybe have a backup plan if it's a student you don't know as well. Okay, over to you, Rose.
Yes, so just a reminder, we have some amazing quick cards that just kind of sum up everything we talk about in these webinars. And you can find them at iqtefl.com. You would simply just go to the resources tab and then down to the quick cards. They're really, really great just to kind of recap on what we've spoken about. There's some useful tips that you can use during your lessons. And yeah, so if you're interested, they're completely free. So please head over there and you can download them. So I've downloaded all of them and they're so useful. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, or you are free to ask them now if you would like. So please just, kind of type them out for us and we'll answer them. We love to read all your questions and your comments. They're really, really great. And please share your own ideas of warm-ups you've used that might have worked really well or not have worked at all. It's all useful information for all teachers around the world. So it's always appreciated. And then, of course, just another reminder, our TEFL course is on sale at the moment, fully accredited by Accreditat. You can head over to iqtefl.com if you're interested in buying the course. It's a great, great course and available on all devices, as well as our CPD courses, which are available now, and you can find them on iqtefl.com as well. And then, of course, for our weekly webinars, please remember to subscribe and head over to all our social media platforms for free content. It's so useful. It's relevant to online teaching and physical classroom teaching. So if you are interested to check them out, please head over to the platforms that you see on your screen. And then, of course, thank you so much for coming and attending our webinar this week. We've had great fun sharing our ideas with you, and we can't wait to read all about your ideas. Please remember to subscribe for all our new videos, and you can watch our previous webinars as well. They're all on our Facebook page, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you, Tammy.
Bye. See you next week.